I'll do that.
Awesome. Great. So, well, I wanted to start talking about today about the March ballot for comment and what we want to do in terms of some of the content that we want to ensure we have in that IG for our March ballot for comment and some of that activity. And I think, especially for those of you who have joined us in the Sparked Accelerator project, I think we need to kind of start with what is this ballot thing and what is a ballot for comment? And I've asked Brett to talk through that with his HL7AU hat on for a little bit to give some of that framing and some of also allow for questions and where we are on how does a balloting, I guess, process really run for HL7 Australia. And then I want to talk through ballot preparation for AU Core. We've got some points where I think we need to come to some decisions on what we really want to tighten up around our resource scope and how we want to treat the AU CDI mappings we've got, because we want to include those in AU Core. And I think we've got some really solid agreement around the resource profiles we've already talked about. But there's also a couple of spots where there looks to be at least two different opinions. And I want to talk about what we can do with those and get some agreement on that. And then have a last bit about Connectathon, which finally we can point to the Eventbrite and have a few questions on that, and then keep building out some of our Connectathon planning in the next few meetings. So it's kind of the agenda for today. So at this point, I kind of want to hand it over to you, Brett, and let me know when you want me to click through the slides
Sure.
about the March ballot for comment.
Cool. Yeah. So this will be pretty brief, but it's I think we're moving. This is probably the largest ballot exercise we've had for HL7 Australia, and we're also moving across to using HL7 international tooling to do our balloting process. So it's a bit of an adventure in terms of getting all of that aligned. So as part of this process, we're really trying to also bed in our processes and describe that fully. We're also going to be connecting back to the AFCC, the FHIR Coordination Committee, to sort of feedback how we're going about things as well, just to sort of get the tick of approval in terms of our community process and our methodology. But primarily, we're following the same methodology that HL7 International uses, with adjustments that we need to sort of apply based on our membership and the way we manage our membership in Australia. So basically, there are a bunch, when we're publishing a usually an implementation guide. So we've got a few implementation guides in the mix at the moment. We've got AU Base, AU Core, e-requesting's coming, and there's also an AU PD spec that's happened from the past that will also be going through this process. So AU Core's put the first cab off the rank really with the new tooling and the processes in place. So pretty much what will happen is we will publish a snapshot of AU Core. It will have a version. It'll be labeled as a ballot, and we'll invite voting on that. So to actually be a voter, you need to be signed up to vote before the ballot opens. We'll talk a bit about timelines later, but primarily that means there's a sign-up form to do that. To officially ballot in HL7 Australia ballots, you have to be an HL7 Australia member, so your membership will get checked on the balloting process. That doesn't mean you can't raise regular issues at any time, no matter who you are. We certainly invite that as well. But to actually vote and have your vote counted, you need to be an HL7 Australia member, and there'll be further instructions on that. But if you're in the working group or a member, you should have received an email to inviting you to participate. Let me know if you haven't, and we'll work out what's happened there. So basically, the work group AU Core TDG is the responsible group who is going to look after the reconciliation of the votes and being able to process those votes into outcomes. As a balloter, you can adjust your position if you are convinced that you can withdraw your ballot, or you're happy with the outcome from the TDG. This is addressing your issue. You can withdraw your vote, and negative votes, and things will get passed that way. So there's basically voting levels that have to be achieved to pass the ballot. So that's that's a set number of votes that are meeting a quorum requirement for the for the material. We'll bed that in exactly. We do have some draft sort of levels, but yeah, we'll document all this as well. So initially we're actually going. I think we're going to the next slide, Danielle. We're doing a ballot for comment cycle. So this is really, we're not approving a standard for use here really, but we are getting feedback from the group. So primarily we're going to be going through the motions of collecting ballots and votes and using the tools to sort of work through the process. And basically we're trying to improve the quality of the material, get wider input as well from the broader community that haven't been directly involved in the TDG. So this is not really to finalise the ballot. We'll be doing another round of balloting later in the year in August. But it is a really good exercise for us to make sure everyone can sign up, go through the process, and use all the tools appropriately, and bed in some of the processes from the sort of organisational side as well in terms of what we're doing. So we'll go on to the next one, Daniel. So the period, so the ballot sign-up's already gone out. That went out as an email to all the working groups, and who people signed up to working groups, and also to all the members, member contacts that we had for HL7 Australia. So far we've had 19 sign-ups, 19 individuals, 12 organisations represented. A number of individuals as well as individual members have signed up to participate so far. We'll continue to collect those sign-ups until the 8th of March. On the 9th of March, we intend to have the AU Core publication finalised and out. So that will be the official ballot snapshot that we will be balloting on, and the ballot period will open to take votes from the 11th of March. So through to the 31st, and through that time you'll be able to submit votes using the tooling. We will definitely be supplying some guidance as to how the tooling works and how to drive the tooling. So I have an intention of having a session to go through that, which we'll talk about soon. And then basically once we've collected all that feedback as ballot material, as votes from individuals, we'll be able to go into a resolution period. So there's intention there to run through a month. Well, it's 2 months, isn't it? 2 months of resolution, which I think, depending on how we go, we might need 2 months. So so that basically the TDG can form a group to be able to reconcile the issues and come to a committee position on all these things. And then once that the sort of decision making is completed, we'll be applying the changes. So there'll be an updated published version which will apply the changes through that ballot for comment period. So pretty much it's an intense process to gather as much feedback as possible and get a position to move forward. The next time around, we'll be aiming to get it into a working standard or trial use standard level that will essentially be the sort of implementation target that people can go forward with the current sort of best knowledge, and we expect that to be the thing people actually implement in the real world, to be able to move on to the sort of next level of maturity. So the plan is to have an information session on the 6th of March before the ballot opens. We'll go through the tooling, how it works, and give some guidance on the process. So that should be. We'll also record that as a useful education sort of piece that we'll keep online as well. So it'll show how to actually submit ballots and how to participate. So that we'll go through that process with everyone online. We'll have a bit of a Q&A, but also a bit of a show and tell on the process. So there's there's a link there to the actual call, but the QR code there is for the actual ballot sign up. So if you do want to participate in the ballot, you really need to sign up. If later you decide you don't want to ballot, you can always abstain. But it's basically please do sign up if you have any interest, because we can't add you after the ballot has opened. So next one, please, Danielle. I think that's it. So obviously I'll take questions. I'll open for questions now, but I think if there's any more detailed questions needed, please, you can just ping me and we'll try and support that. If you have any problems signing up or any issues around that kind of membership stuff, let me know. We are working through a process of getting more documentation in place as well as to how this process works, because our sign-up process is a little different than the international one due to our membership differences. So we're trying to do a process guide in terms of the governance process to be clear that when we're not really deviating from the HL7 international processes really in terms of its intent, but we do have some operational differences that we form our ballot pools and things and using a different method. So that's all going to be documented. It's not there now, but we're moving towards that. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Brett. So if there are any questions now or comments, we can take those, but noting that this is sort of more of a forecasting and context for that. And there will be the processes that will become available, and HL7 Australia will both do a webinar and also do a video on how to actually vote if you sign up. And you could also contact HL7 Australia if you have any questions about how to sign up or any of the overall processes. It doesn't look like anyone has their hand up for that. So we might move on to, with that context sort of in place, about what do we do what are we going to actually put out as our ballot for comment? So coming back, I think, to the point of why we're having a ballot for comment, which I guess is really two-pronged. One that allows HL7 Australia to get those processes and tools in place. But it also lets us draw a line in the sand early on in the development of a standard to put out a snapshot and to elicit feedback, formal feedback that we have to work through as a technical design group. So every single comment or piece of feedback that comes in as a ballot piece of feedback has to be addressed. We need to go through those and disposition those, some of which we may decide is something that is out of scope of AU Core or is not appropriate or needs to be addressed in R1 or is maybe a roadmap thing, or we accept and we continue to work on. And we need to go through all of those and to continue to move forwards. So we're kind of putting this milestone in the AU Core development. So about 6 months after we've started the AU Core refinement process, to go, let's have a ballot for comment. Let's elicit feedback, not just from this technical design group, but also from the wider community on where our snapshot is here, and get that content in and look through to address it, and then move forwards into our end goal for that standard for trial use, which is coming up in August. So that's sort of the goals around why we've got the for comment ballot coming up. So let's talk about what our scope looks like. And there are a couple of things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to start with Our AU CDI mappings and our resource profiles we're taking into R1. And I also want to, if we've got time, talk through both the overall preparation activities and see where anyone wants to put their hand up and participate. And I also want to talk through the connectathon. We'll make sure we have time at the end to kind of highlight that, because it's really important that the connectathon signups and registration and questions are answered for this group before, I guess, really the wider group. So I'm going to start with showing this. So the AUCDI R1 draft for comment came out. It came out pretty recently, like almost a little bit over a week ago. So hopefully everyone here is reviewing that and putting in their own individual feedback on that. The draft for comment that came out has only a couple of, I think, differences that are substantive compared to what we were working from. And those are at an element level. They're really more in the medication use statement area. But the thing that I'm really trying to draw people's attention to here is about the mappings into AU Core and the resource profiles that we think are the appropriate means for exchanging the AU CDI data classes and elements. And we've got some good agreement across the majority of AU CDI. So the mappings were put together and we sent out a draft for feedback, I think about 2 months ago. And we've had quite a bit of feedback in since then, some of which has had a lot of minor content. But what we've really got are 3 data classes where it looks like we've got quite a bit of work left to do. So we've got solid agreement across the things that are shaded, I'll call them salmon. The lighter coloured orangey pinky ones. There we seem to have no contention. All the feedback is there. It's pretty solid. There seems to be a really obvious way we're going forwards in AU Core. But for procedure completed event, medication use statement and biomarkers, we've got some options and some choices, some of which are having a lot more discussion than others. I'll direct people, if you aren't already on Zulip, so chat.fire.org, there's a pretty extensive conversation going on right now about how do we support medication use statement. And I'll move on to this slide here to say, this is where we still need agreement around what are we supporting. So from our potential scope that we had originally in trying to come down to what are we going to actually come into a national agreement, what are our drivers, and to bring that into a much tighter R1 scope that we have national agreement on, that we've got validated, tested, and is reasonably mature, that we can publish as an AU Core R1. We're still in this working through position for, I think, these 3 data classes. Medication use statement, where at the moment we're working through, is that supported through medication statement? Is that supported through medication request? Or is it supported actually through both? And what does that look like? On procedure completed, and apologies, that's not quite up to date. The latest data class name from AUCDI is procedure completed event. We're currently going through discussions in the AU Core space on, is that supported through AU Core procedure? Is that supported through AU Core condition instead? Which I think is feeding into the question we have open around how is medical history supported, whether it's textual or otherwise. And the last question we still have open as a group is biomarkers, where we have a number of potential candidate profiles, but we also haven't had the consensus discussions as a group to say, how are we supporting those? Is that through something that is a biomarker specific observation? Are we actually going to support that through a higher level diagnostic results observation? We also have pathology results, which is a derived more specialization of diagnostic results. So that still remains to be something to work through as this group to come to an agreement on. I just wanted to highlight that here to say, this is where we're still working through items. And if you are interested in any of this, please get on to chat.fire.org. We are having those conversations both nationally within the Australian space, but we also have a lot of people from the international space contributing. New Zealand is particularly interested around what we are doing with medication use statement and whether we're using medication statement, medication request. It's probably looking like we're moving towards having a joint session with some of the international co-chairs around pharmacy, but that's sort of coming down the end. I just wanted to highlight that for us here, because I want to focus us a bit more on what does that mean for what we do in our March ballot and around our AU CDI mappings. We've got a draft set of mappings, and we have a draft set of mappings both where we look to be agreed on content, and those are, I've hyperlinked them here, but that link has been out and provided through multiple channels to this group and the wider Australian community to provide feedback on. And what I think we need to do now is draw a line in the sand, because we want to actually propose this content into the AU Core March ballot, because it's not in the IG yet. And I would like to propose that we move that content both where we've got our agreed mappings, where there appears to be solid agreement, and we also put the yet to be agreed content where we have, I guess, competing proposals for what that looks like into our AU Core March for the ballot for March, and that we call out specifically to balloters to request some feedback on those usage for the mappings that we don't have agreement on. That's my proposal, that we can actually include all of that content into our March ballot. Can I get some comment or questions or otherwise feedback from that proposal from this group? Does anyone disagree?
I like the idea of giving us a structure around which a lot of people can express particular ideas on particular points.
Andy, I think you've raised your hand.
Yeah, I'm wondering which, if you are going to put it into a ballot, then are you going to choose one of the options? And if so, which option do you choose in terms of, because that's going to become the default?
I'm suggesting we don't choose one in the ballot for comment, because this is not a final ballot. This is for eliciting feedback from a wider community for the ballot for comment. So I'm suggesting that we elevate the content we've been working through on the Confluence page into the AU Core IG for the March for ballot, and specifically call out to balloters where we're still seeking feedback on where we don't have agreement on those positions. That's what I think we should do. Are there any objections to doing that? It looks like there aren't, because what I want to do is bring that in and actually bring that back to our next pre-consensus to say, here's what that looks like, and get further feedback from this group to say, this is what that guidance page, that AU CDI mapping would look like, and what it would look like to people we're asking for feedback from the balloters, and see if there's anything else we need to further adjust. Any objections to that? All right, I'll accept that we've got a unanimous position to go forwards with bringing that content in a draft form, and to then bring that back to this group next Friday to present what that looks like and see and ask for further feedback or refinement so that we have the right thing coming into the March ballot. Awesome. And you are still able to comment on the Confluence page, as well as join in the really interesting and detailed discussions that are going on chat.fhir.org. I think when we get to a further position on those items, what we'll end up doing that is bringing back some more concrete proposals to this AU Core Technical Design Group, as people have worked through them, to say, you know, after all this discussion and working through international, this is what this looks like. But right now, we're not going to get to a position on those for the March draft, which comes out on the 9th. All right, so with that in mind, let's have a look at this page. This is busy, and I apologize for that, but it is actually what the current state of the AU Core FHIR IG looks like. So the overall box here shows a sort of what is by default in our ballot for comment draft, because these are all the resource profiles currently in the AU Core IG. We did do a cut of the things that we thought were just in R2 at the end of last year. And coming in for the ballot for comment, we've still got this set of content, of which a number of which will end up migrating into R2. So the things in orange, in darker solid orange, over in this R1 resource scope, are the things that were proposed on the R1 scope page to be the things that are in, that are agreed. They meet our criteria. There has been no feedback when this was put out for feedback 2 months ago to say that these shouldn't be. So this is in for now. And then we have the question mark space where we need to sort of draw a line between R1 and R2. And there's 2 separate colors here. The ones that I have the cross hatched are the ones where we have a question mark around, is this the right resource profile that will support AU CDI? And it's very likely that the R1 for AU Core will only support the one that support, okay, hang on, that's difficult to say. I expect R2 to have all of these profiles, but we need to prioritize the choice that maps to the AU CDI element. So coming back to this page, for example, a medication use statement. If we decide that both medication statement and medication request should be in, then I think they should be R1. If we decide only one of them supports medication use statement, then I think that resource will become the R1 resource and the other will move to R2. So we still have these question marks around which is the appropriate resource profile to support. And I've carried that through onto here to have, these are the ones most closely sort of coming into R1, but we can't say they're in yet because we still need to work through how that maps to AU CDI. And then we have further on the left, the other items that were highly ranked by the technical design group when then we did the priority resource and profile voting, but do not yet map into a AU CDI element as being more likely to end up moving into an R2 space than being able to complete their consensus sort of journey into an AU Core R1 IG. And I sort of wanted to show what our current state is, because I need to put to this group around, is this the position we still put out for ballot for comment? Can we make any further changes? And I want to then bring up this one. This is our progress to date, which was a little bit scary when I put this slide together. Of all the resource profiles we've decided that we are talking about and working through, only the ones in orange are the ones that we have either started or are relatively right the way through in our consensus process. The ones that are now not a solid color, so medication request, medication statement, smoking status, are ones where we haven't yet scheduled our consensus discussions on. And as we go through that R1 period, we aren't going to get to all of these items. I think that's clear, and I don't think anyone really expected we would be able to include this massive scope in our very first release, or that was really the goal. So we need to decide on where we cut. Do we cut now for March ballot for comment? Do we retain things? And I've got a proposal that I want to talk through with the group here. And for our March ballot for comment, I think it's really important that we retain our borderline resources, those ones where it might be one or both, because we have not worked through that yet. I think we really need to retain those in seeking our ballot for comment. We may then need to refine if, as we work through, we decide that only one of them is what needs to be kept for R1. I also think in the next set, we've got a number of priority resources from the technical design group that don't map to an AU CDI R1 element, but are nonetheless high priority. And we've got this option of, do we retain them in the March ballot so that we can start getting feedback on them, which will help us also support the AU e-requesting project, because there's a number of core resources in there that I think are the resources that the e-requesting project will need, but don't map yet to an AU CDI class. So we have the option to retain those in the March ballot and seek that feedback, while likely taking them out for the August, or we can take them out now. And lastly, I want to ask this group and propose where I think we can already do some quick cuts and remove some things where I think it's obvious that they aren't the really high priority ones, and we just aren't going to get there. So I'm going to put that to the group. Are there any objections with retaining these borderline ones in our AU core that goes out for ballot for comment? Okay, we'll take that as, oh, Sanjay.
Sorry if I'm repeating what you might have already discussed. Have we had consensus discussions about the borderline items yet?
We have not, no.
Then any idea where we want them to be part of ballot?
Because it's the ballot for comment where we're seeking early feedback on those.
Okay.
It's not the ballot to publish the standards. So if we come back to the ballot levels, the ballot for AU core that will go in through a standard is the August ballot, which will be for our working standards, so the standard for trial use. When you put together an early ballot for comment, you're seeking early feedback, and it is relatively at the front end of a development cycle. To get some wider requests for feedback, not just from the technical design group, but also from the wider community.
Sorry, just I know other hands are raised. Just second part of my question. So would there be enough time, sufficient time from March till August for these items which are borderline, for which we haven't had consensus, for us to have a consensus?
I think so. I think that's quite likely, noting that these are choices. So although we'll get some feedback from the ballot for comment, depending on where we get to in our discussions, we may drop some of those out when we get through our mappings, and they will therefore go into the R2 space. But I think these are the ones that are, we don't actually know yet if these are R1 or R2, because we've not finished those agreements around how do they map to the AU CDI data classes.
Some of them will be complicated, like medications request or statement.
Well, it's the, yeah, the medication usage is what we're talking about back in here. Medication use statement.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got some hands up. I think, Andy, you're first.
Yeah, I think this will create a lot of confusion because we don't have the context of use understood, and especially when it comes to some of the stuff around e-requesting, it's going to be a whole parallel and set of commentary that don't necessarily carry the conversation that e-requesting is going to go through. And as I said before, I'm concerned that the target that we put in there for commentary, it's got to be something. It's not just kind of, you know, something happens here around pathology result observations. There's got to be a position to have commentary on, and I'm unclear where that position comes from without some initial discussion and at least recognition of the use cases that's associated with that element.
So you're suggesting this one, the point 2, the short-term retain for feedback. So where there isn't a mapping to an AU CDI element, which gives us the use case and the reason for inclusion in AU core, that we don't include them in the March ballot scope.
Yeah, I don't want to replace the consensus discussion with a ballot. for feedback.
Yep.
I think it's the wrong tool to use.
And Liam?
Yeah, I guess it's similar sort of question, but I was just trying to understand what would drive if there's no consensus discussion that's been held on some of these resources, what would drive the resource that's put up for comment? Would that just be an initial draft just put forward? And I'm just wondering what informs that.
And you're right, that's what it would be. So I think that's at this point for us to say, do we think there's value in keeping those drafts that are currently in the draft? We haven't decided to cut them yet in the March ballot, or do we cut them now? And is there any value the technical design group can see in keeping them and asking the wider group for feedback on these drafts? I'm quite neutral on that. And so far we've had 2 people, I guess, put their hand up to say, I don't think there is,
We vote
which
on
is
that?
completely valid.
Sorry, Daniel, should we vote on that? I don't know.
I think we should. Any further comments on that? Andrew?
If we take them out for ballot for comment, can they still go into ballot for R1 in August, or is this okay?
Yes, they can.
I do think, especially with like service requests, to Andy's point, getting this in earlier though, like in refuting Andy's point, we do need people to comment on these, and the progress of the consensus meetings or getting through the consensus, I think as one of the co-chairs, I am worried about getting through everything. And if we want something like service request in for R1, I would love to be able to get as much wider commentary as possible as early as possible, so that this entire group can see that commentary, work through that commentary, and move it all forward. Because knowing what's coming up in the future of, we still need to get through service requests, we still need to get through medication requests, we still need to get through procedure condition. There's a lot for us to do. And if we can get it to something like ballot for comment to get more commentary from a wider audience, I do see value in that, and keeping these in short term to retain them for feedback.
Okay. Any further comments on the short-term return for feedback? Okay, Liam?
Sorry, I was just wondering if there's a way we could get some of that, I don't know, just like a slim feedback on that consensus discussion to try and fast track some of this
The
to
short
get
answer
initial
is
draft?
no.
Yeah, okay.
Well, the draft that comes out for ballot is the 8th of March. And there's only one consensus meeting before that, and it's on condition.
Yeah, okay.
Which is mapped to an AUCDI element. So there's not we don't have the space in our schedule to put that in at this stage before that. So, and this is that thing around, what do we want to put out as a group? Do we want to put out more than we think we'll get through and get some feedback now? Or do we want to keep it nice and tight for the balloters to go, look, this is what we really think is much more likely to be the R1 scope, and only get feedback on those? And I think, unless there's further comments, we might be ready to put to a vote on this. Do we retain the higher priority R2 resources to elicit feedback now, or do we actually remove them from our March ballot for scope? It doesn't mean they can't come in later, but it means they're not in what we're publishing in March and then putting out for ballot. All right, I'll ask, does someone want to move that we remove those resources from the AU core scope? Sanjeev, you've got your hand up. Is that to move?
Yeah, cut. Yeah.
All right. Does someone want to second that?
Yep.
So was that you, Andy?
Yes, indeedy.
Okay. Can I ask for people to put their hand up if they're going to vote negatively? And do that using Zoom.
Voting negatively for remove, is that right?
Correct. So if you wish to retain these and not remove them, put your hand up now. Okay, we'll record that as two people. Can you put your hands down, please? And I'll ask for people who choose to abstain from this vote to put your hand up now. I just want to check the person who clapped their hand. Oh, no, I think you've corrected that to a hand up. So that's 13 people have chosen to abstain. The rest will be taken as affirmative, which means that motion passes. So we will now be removing the higher priority resources that aren't associated with our borderline mapping decisions, which negates the quick cut because we've just made a fairly significant cut. That's pretty amazing. And I'll ask people to put their hand down unless they have a question. If you do have a question, keep your hand up and I'll get to you in a second. All right, I think Richard, you're first.
If we leave those extra, if those extra things are in there, we could leave them in a snapshot and then put up a new snapshot with them taken out so that people can then refer to those designs in something in a public place without, and that would let people talk about them without them muddying the discussion about the ballot.
Love your thinking. We thought of this. We've got one.
Good.
If you, on AU Core, look at your directory of published versions, this last snapshot is the snapshot of everything that will be permanently maintained in an NPM package and otherwise. It has everything we might otherwise take out so people can see all of those.
Just what I was hoping for.
Okay, I think, Brett, you're next.
Yeah, there's also branches as well if we end up working on those things before they're merged. Yeah, so we're going to have very little opportunity to do adding anything else at this point. Is that where we're at?
You might have to qualify the adding anything else. Do you mean
in terms of the things on the borderline? We're not going to get a chance to have
that depends on
right?
how we get through and what our progress is. We've got priorities, basically.
Yep.
If something becomes a significant priority and it's a significant priority deemed by the technical design group, so we would take that through this group, someone can raise it. If we all agree it's a priority, then we would work on it. It's driven by it is driven by the community process. So
yep,
that is sort of up to us.
Cool. That's good.
I don't think so. Looking at our timeframes,
yeah,
like we've been a little bit ambitious for R1 so far, which I like, but it is squishing us a bit for how much we can include.
Yeah, cool. And noting we do have our face-to-face in March for half day. I would hope that some of that time could get used to progress some of this consensus.
And I might kind of move us along there at this point, because we do want to get to that point in the meeting, but we've got only about 15 minutes left, I think.
That's good.
So just want to, Ruben, a comment?
Yeah, comment/question. Strategically, are we through this whole process going to get to a point where one version of AU Core can be relied on to completely represent a corresponding version of AU CDI? Or will there always and forevermore be this disconnect between what's covered by one version and the other?
Well, there's only a disconnect now while we're working through it. And I suppose you could argue it only depends on if we don't achieve it in R1. So far, it looks like we're on track to fully meet it. So I think that might be.
It seems that way. I guess I also just want to make it clear to the community that's participating in these ballots and requests for comments that ultimately that is our aim. And there is this disconnect is a temporary thing as we work through it. Because I'm a bit concerned that people will assume that's the way things will be going forward. So can we put something in the ballot to make that clear?
I'll catch up with you offline about what the AU Core IG looks like compared to the, I guess, the US Core or other IGs that have underpinnings from DIs, and about what you think might be more helpful in an informative fashion. And we can probably bring that back and show the TDG to see if that, I guess, aligns with what they're thinking.
Yeah, I think that would be good, because we're always holding up US CDI and US Core as a model we're trying to emulate here in Australia. And so I think many people will hold this view that, like the US, we'll have a Core IG corresponding to a CDI with full coverage. So happy to take that offline. Thanks, Danielle.
Okay. Brett, last comment quickly.
Yeah, just I think the way we're running CDI is there are some things in there which are telling systems on how they should work, and that is a bigger, harder question for systems, I think, in terms of implementation than implementing interoperability on something that already exists. So I think there is a bit of a tension there where I think some things, if the concepts in CDI I've seen systems already do, this is all fine to build interoperability on top of it. But some things are much more difficult, I think. So I think we have to kind of weigh that into the conversation because it's about how do you implement CDI in a system, and then how does it turn up as being interoperability down the track. Yeah.
And Richard?
Should we push back on CDI and say, lovely idea, give the community more notice, we'll consider it for version 2? We suggest you do too.
If there are parts of it that you don't agree with, you absolutely should. I mean, AU CDI is up for comment. I need to comment on that and make sure that I, as a technical design group person, go through that and consider it where that would be the appropriate form. If you think there are items in there that either aren't maybe quite right or aren't formed in the right way, or maybe even are very good but don't form part of what you think is the AU CDI, so not that scope. When we go through and we look at this in AU Core, I imagine that we might end up coming to maybe one of 3 decisions at how we support AU CDI. We might go yes, and we've got that as must support, and here's how it works. We might go no, and our no flavor might take 2 flavors. One, that's very good, but we can't do it now. Like, it's not in this release. We're going to have to roadmap that, and that can happen for a number of reasons. We might come to the position in the technical design group that we vote to not include support for that in AU Core, and we'll need to understand why and then provide that feedback back to the clinical design group, which I guess would be the equivalent of the change request for us to indicate what we're saying that they've gotten wrong from an AU CDI perspective and why. Maybe we think a different concept is actually more appropriate. I don't think we've hit upon that yet, but it's always possible that that might be where things go. So I'm going to skip past the ballot prep activities and we'll kind of delay that to the 1st. So in a week's time, we're doing another pre-consensus. I want to talk about what we're actually changing in our ballot preparation, including our normative changes, what we need to get through an editorial, asking for people to put their hands up, but we don't have time. So I want to skip on to, because it's been a question for quite a while around our connectathon. So I need to highlight for this group that the registration is open and it has limited spaces. There are 4 events. On the 20th of March, there is both a symposium and a work group happening. For the work group, which is a work group day, both the AU FHIR work group and us, the AU Core Technical Design Group, will be meeting face-to-face in Sydney. And there is registration for those, and only a small number of spots, again, are available. So if you intend to come, if you're in Sydney, you want to be there, please register as soon as you possibly can. It is very limited. I think they've only allowed, I think it actually says there, like 35 spots. And on the Connectathon day, so what you sign up for, you don't sign up for a track in specific. What you're signing up for is that you will attend the Connectathon day. This counts for whether it's the AU core track or for the AU e-requesting track. And you need to sign up for that. And there are, again, limited spots. There's only 60 spots currently available. In fact, there's probably less because people have already signed up for that. So I think we're also looking at like half of those are taken. So please, if you're going to come, if you're going to bring content for that, sign up for that as soon as you possibly can. And at this point, I'll probably ask for some questions about it, because you might notice there's a location on the AU core one, but not a location on the Connectathon. Okay, someone's put their hand up. Sorry, let me just get to. Oh no, they've put their hand down. Okay.
Yeah, I was asking about that.
So we do have the venue booked now for the Sydney location, which is going to be sort of CBD Sydney. We are still getting agreements, final agreements around where the Connectathon is. Currently, it looks like the Connectathon will be in a separate location. It will be in Westmead in the FHIR offices, which is in Parramatta. So if you've booked your hotel in the CBD, you might have to get on a 20-minute train each morning to pop out to the Connectathon. Any other questions or things people want to raise about the Connectathon while myself or Brett are on the line, and see if we can answer those? All right.
While you're here, can you talk up the symposium at all, or do I do better to read the other stuff?
The symposium is the joint part between HL7 Australia and HL7 New Zealand, which are having a number of speakers across both, because this Connectathon is actually across both HL7 Australia and New Zealand to a certain extent. There's a number of interesting speakers who are presenting some really innovative stuff that's going on in FHIR. I think Brian Postlethwaite is talking. A couple of the other folks are. You'll need to have a look at the agenda there. It does go past the work group meeting. So I think the symposium is currently, it starts in the morning at 9 a.m. and it goes through until I think 2:30 in the afternoon at this point, which is basically discussions. That's what that is, a series of keynote kind of presentations. And the work group meetings are, well, I guess I'm in the face-to-face of our work group meetings where we'll get in and we'll try to go through a number of things and get some of our work done. I'm pretty interested to attend both the FHIR work group meeting and the technical design group meeting. David, I don't know if the symposium is online. I actually expect it will, because it is joint between Australia and New Zealand. So there will be a virtual connection between the two. So I think you can virtually join. I think we're trying to work through in the FHIR work group meeting if we can have a virtual connection as well. And I don't know if we can do the same with the AU Core Technical Design Group. So there's going to be no room facilities, but we're having a chat amongst the co-chairs if anyone has the technical capabilities to bring in any of the, I've lost the word, the polysonic kind of connections.
Yeah.
So we can let people actually connect virtually and hear what's going on in the room at the same time. That's probably going to be more of a we intend to, and will it work on the day? Don't know, because it's not going to be provided by the facility, but we'll have a go and see if we can get both the FHIR work group and the AU Core Technical Design Group happening, not just face-to-face, but virtual for people who can't be there on the day. But I can't promise the connection will go well.
Yeah, I think too, Danielle, I know the FHIR work group has a plan to publish a more complete agenda in terms of topics as well, so that people can, if they want to move between the groups for any particular reason, but they'll know what's going on. Yeah, so we'll try and batch up similar topics together and and run at least the FHIR work group. We're planning to do that, and I imagine you'll have an agenda for the AU core group as well.
I think that's something we want to get through, which I need to bring back to this group around both our Connectathon track planning and also what do we want to get through in our face-to-face session. It's a nice opportunity to have a really kind of solid block of from 12:30 to 5 p.m. to actually get through and work through some more interesting parts of our content. And we'll also have on the Connectathon day some track breakouts, and I want to bring to the group and ask them maybe in the 1st of March where we'll do some planning what the breakouts they're interested in. I think we've got some we can prepare, but also ask you guys on the line, what are the things that you want to see and work through? And we're about out of time, actually, if we want to close off at the end of the hour. So I might ask for any further final comments on this, and otherwise we will close the meeting. All right, we're going to close off the meeting. We're going to keep this discussion going and talking about the ballot preparation activities. In between today and the next time we meet, Dushy and I will do some pull requests into the AU Core IG to affect the changes we've just agreed on, to tighten up that ballot scope and also to put in those mappings and bring it back to this group to double check that that's actually what we were expecting and we don't need to make any further changes. And to bring in anything else, I think that we're interested in making sure has been put in, I guess, or taken out before we expose this for our ballot for comment. But thanks everyone for today. Super appreciate it. And I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.